Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of wild snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down under Hive.
Howdy Hive Scum and welcome back. This video is something that I've wanted to do for quite a while. I have done similar things for Necromunda, sort of tier lists and sort of rankings for brutes, leaders, champions, etc. in the past. And this has always been a real sort of difficult thing to do, particularly as I'm going to be looking at Necromunda gangers now. So what I'm going to do today is try to make some sort of tier list for all of the gangers. And when I say gangers, that is specifically fighters with the ganger type in their label. So that doesn't include spirers, it doesn't include prospects or anything like that either. This is just strictly gangers. Now, there are a lot in here, and I need to make a few points before we get into this because this will cause a lot of arguments, and many people will not agree with me on a lot of the stuff here, and that's absolutely fine. And again, making any sort of tier list is always something that's quite difficult with Necromunda because, you know, Necromunda is a narrative game, and I play it for narrative. However, there definitely are some things that are just better than others, and that's just plain and simple, really. Now, you know, you can take this with a pinch of salt or you can, you know, take it on board, but these are sort of the ways that I have sort of quantified how good or bad all of the gangers are in Necromunda to date. And the way that I've done this is by scoring each of the gangers out of 5 points, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best for each of these categories. Now, the first category is raw stats, how good the gangers' overall stats are. We're then looking at the house list access. So this is what access the ganger gets from the off on their house list. Not what they can get later on, just what they have available. Is there variety in there, and are those weapons good? The next category is cost value. Not the cost. Are they expensive? Are they cheap? This is the value that they have to their gang in terms of credit cost. So are they worth it for the cost in credits, basically? The next one is, of course, shooting. Pretty straightforward there. Are they good at shooting or not? And melee as well, or melee, depending on how you want to say it. Those are obvious choices here. And of course, that is kind of factored into the overall skills as well. But this is specifically taking into account also the weapons that they can get access to and how good they are at using them in close combat and at shooting. The next one is durability, how tough and survivable your gangers are in games of Necromunda, how long they stick around for. Mobility is the next one, how sort of mobile, how they can get around the board as well. Versatility, are they completely one-dimensional, or do they offer you lots of different ways of playing them and building them? That, I think, is a very big factor to take into account here. We've then got unique mechanics, so the gang's unique mechanics, if they've got one. Do they really benefit from those gang's unique mechanics or not? Do they not have any at all? In some cases they don't. In some cases they have very powerful gang mechanics. The next one is unique rules. Some gangers do benefit from special rules. Some have real downsides with the special rules, and some have really big boosts as well. And then we have skill access, how many skill trees and which skill trees they gain access to. Are they good skill trees or are they bad skill trees? And lastly, we have campaign progression as well. So how good these guys can be in a long-term campaign as they go through it. So factoring all of that in, I've scored each of these categories out of 5. Again, 1 being worst, 5 being best. And what we've got here is actually a really close run thing. So the first place, the top, ganger, which I'm not going to reveal just yet, is at 41 points, whereas the bottom one down in tier 3 is 29 points. So only 12 points different between first and last place. So that's worth highlighting now as well. And of course, this is going to change depending on the meta in your local groups and such as well. And I hate using that term with Necromunda, and I usually get crucified for such things anyway. But I think a lot of people have asked me for this, and it's been a long time coming. So I think now with most of the gangs sort of rounded out, we've just had the Enforcer new book, we've had Nomads recently and Squats as well. It's time to look at the overall gangers in Necromunda. So I'm kind of nervous doing this, to be honest. And again, please do comment down below if you really disagree with me. I want to know why. And that's absolutely fine. Let's get the conversation going. And let me know anything that I leave out here as well, anything that I've overlooked. But generally speaking, I've played every gang in Necromunda in a campaign setting pretty much. So I should have a fairly good idea, I hope, of how things are going down. But like I said, remember the top spot. There's very little between the top and bottom here in terms of the points and the way that I've scored it. But I do think the overall scoring that I've done here is pretty fair and concise to get an overall sort of idea of how good or not these gangers are. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. I've split this into 1, 2, 3, 4 tiers, with tier 0 being the top, 1, 2, and 3 being the bottom there as well. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. And unfortunately, the bottom spot goes to, drumroll, the Ogryn Lobo Slave. Now, I can already hear you screaming at me through YouTube at the moment. I know the Lobo Slave has lots and lots of good points and merits. It is very tough. It has basically constant nerves of steel, which is an amazing special rule. However, it has many downsides, which are why this thing has scored quite low. This is the Ogryn Lobo Slave, by the way. Firstly, it can never become a specialist, so it can't gain skills. That does mean that I scored it quite low in terms of campaign progression. It is also incredibly slow and not very, maneuverable in games of Necromunda. It has a low versatility in terms of it really only has one use, and that is generally it's a roadblock. You chuck it at stuff. Sometimes it kills stuff. It's not actually that good in close combat. Yes, it has high strength and average weapon skill, and a few attacks, but the weapons that you can get for this guy are limited. It does have no shooting capacity whatsoever, and overall, unfortunately, it does end up at the bottom of the pile. Now, I do know that the Lobo Slave is very good in its own right in certain ways and at doing its thing. However, its thing is very, very limited, and it doesn't offer much else aside from being a absolute unstoppable roadblock. Now, what happens with Lobo Slaves, I tend to find in campaign games and whatnot, is they tend to just get stuck in close combat with something that they're usually more expensive than, I suppose. They are 70 credits and they've usually got a few bits and bobs on them as well. Usually they tie up Juves and gangers without actually killing them, in my experience. Quite often that happens. And, I suppose that's good, but there are other gangers in this pile which will absolutely murk a Lobo Slave in close combat, despite its multiple wounds and toughness, because we've really got some good weapons and some good stats and stuff on some of the other gangers here. So there you go. Again, you can crucify me for that, but the Lobo Slave is the bottom of my pile purely on the way that I've scored it based on the different categories that I highlighted earlier. Now, the next one in tier 3 is a difficult one for me to swallow as well, because I do love these guys as a gang. However, with the new release of the the new Palanite release, should I say, we have got the badzone enforcers really suffering out of this. The Palanites did pretty well, and we're going to talk about those in a bit. They are certainly not in tier 3, but the badzone patrolman, unfortunately, has fallen down quite a bit. They're no different from how they were before. They've just kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit. The problems with these guys is they have very, very average stats. They're quite expensive for what they really do. They no longer come with any armor. They only come with magnicals. They don't come with the stub gun either. And also, to be honest, the amount of stuff they get access to has been limited a little bit. Also, worth mentioning, these guys, if they get bolt guns and enforcer shotguns, they are basically scarce as well, which is horrific. It just means that you really kind of almost don't want to take those weapons, even though they're still very good. It just means that overall, the badzone patrolman has ended up in the sort of bottom of the pile here, really, with 32 points. So again, I highlight the top spot is 41 points, so it's not a huge difference here, but I think it's just enough to put the badzone patrolman, unfortunately, in tier 3 here. And again, let me know what you think about this. I do personally think that badzone enforcers have suffered quite a bit with the new book, really, especially if you compare them to the Palanites now. Lastly, in tier 3, and unfortunately another Ogryn casualty here. This is just the slave Ogryn ganger. Considerably better than the Lobo Slave in some ways, in the way that I've scored it anyway. Yes, they can be pinned, but they can take more stuff. They can certainly take grenades as well and chuck them a really long way, which is very good. They're very tough. They're very survivable. They're okay in close combat. They're not very good at shooting otherwise, of course. And yes, they aren't quite as good as a few other things. And again, Where they score low here really is they don't have a sort of unique mechanic or any sort of unique special rules that make them particularly good next to other gangers. They have very limited access to stuff. And overall, unfortunately, despite scoring very high in sort of durability and some other areas, they just ended up at the bottom here, unfortunately, in tier 3. So again, Ogren's pretty good. They've got multiple wounds. They're very tough, but they are suffering in so many other areas now compared to other gangs and the way that they operate. These guys are also very pinnable too, unlike the Lobo Slave. So they are in the bottom here, unfortunately, and those Ogren fans out there are going to crucify me. But I will just quickly say the Ogren gang needs to be updated at some point. It is really outdated and its power level has gone down considerably since we've had some of the later gangs come out. Also, Venator Ogrins are a thing and they are so much better than regular Ogrins. And you can run an entire gang of Venator Ogrins with guns and they're just so much better and you can choose their skills too. Okay, tier 2 now. These are the sort of average ones really, and there are quite a few in here. There are 6 in fact. And I think most people would imagine that these would be in this place, to be fair. They're all on the same points, by the way, but the way that I've ordered them is kind of in my preference. So at the bottom here, we've got the Outcast Scum. These guys are, you know, Scum in general. I love Scum. You'll know if you watch any of my videos that I love Scum in Outcast gangs, Brood Scum as well, by the way. This is the same for both. They only come in at 34 points here, and where they do really well is their cost value. They are incredibly cheap for what they do. They've got very average stats, not very good on the mental stats with 8 pluses on everything, but you know, they're a very average ganger that has access to some okay stuff. You know, they're limited in what they can do. Their skill access is cunning, which is pretty decent really, but they do suffer from just being incredibly mediocre, of course. And if you've run Outcast gangs, you're going to run plenty of these guys, and usually you're going to have double the amount of scum to your enemy's gangers as well, because you've got, you know, they're so much cheaper as well. So the fact that they're cheap does make them pretty good, but that's really the only thing going for scum generally, as you'll know. The next one is the Helot Cultist, which is in the same position really as the scum. They're slightly more expensive than a scummer. They're slightly better in the mental stats as well, though. So it's much of a muchness, really. They get access to pretty much the same sort of equipment. However, you know, I think you can have a specialist who might be able to have a flamer and stuff as well, which is pretty good. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But Helot Scum come in at the same amount of points as the Hive Scum here, or Helot Scum. They're not Helot Scum, they're Helot Cultists, sorry. Mainly because they've got slightly better mental stats. It means that they are slightly above the Outcast Scum there. Another thing to highlight with Helots is they do actually get really good access to skills with Ferocity and Cunning, 2 of the better skill sets if you ask me. So again, that's why I've placed them above the Underhive Scum. The next one, and very, very similar actually, is the Genestealer Cult Neophyte. You know, they've got some things going for them. Where the Neophyte is really let down, they are slightly better than Helots in their access to equipment, and they come with hazard suits, which is great. They're cost effective, pretty much. They've got very good skill access with, again, Ferocity and Cunning. However, what really lets down the Genestealer Cult gangers is their movement 4, which is definitely not great on something that isn't particularly tough. Sure, you can't set them on fire, and they've got, you know, a 6-up armor save from the gate, but they're just not very good, really. You can give them a 3rd arm if you want to pay the cost for that, and that makes them a little bit better, but it's not really worth it in terms of the cost generally. So the GSC Neophyte is sort of lumped in there with the Helot Cultist and the Outcast Scum now. Also in tier 2, we have the Redemptionist Brethren. And again, this might be a little bit contentious for a few people. The Redemptionist Brethren I have actually put below the Cawdor Brethren, which we're going to talk about in a bit, and I've actually put in a slightly higher tier. The Redemptionist Brethren is, you know, okay. The stats are okay. The mental stats are not particularly great. Again, very, very average. Not that cheap for what they do, to be honest. Their special rule never comes up. It just never comes up. So, you know, there it is. The unique mechanic, of course, makes them very good. So, you know, Articles of Faith, you can do some really cool shenanigans with these guys, and that does kind of save them here. They do get access to some interesting gear, but nothing nearly as good as the Cawdor Brethren with the blunderpoles, etc., and great swords that we can talk about later. Yes, they can get grenade launchers and things like that. If they're specialists, they can get fire pikes as well. But generally speaking, I'd say the Redemptionist Brethren is just above the Neophyte, Helot Cultist, and the Outcast Scum, unfortunately, because it does sort of fall down in a few areas generally. At the top of tier 2, we've got the Orlok and Escher Ganger, so the Escher Sister and the Orlok Gunner. You know, they're okay. They've got a few things that do make them shine, of course. If we're talking about the Escher Ganger, the house list is pretty decent, but the main thing to highlight there is the 5-credit las guns, which are ridiculously cheap and very, very good for what they do. So having Escher Sisters as caddies for cheap las guns is the way. But spamming anything I'm usually against anyway, even if it is a las gun, quite frankly. But otherwise, they are just very mediocre. The skill access is okay. The stuff they can get is okay. Their unique mechanic isn't that fantastic, and 9 times out of 10 you're not going to be using it on your gangers anyway. You're going to be using the best chem stuff for your death maidens and your queens and your matriarchs and stuff like that as well. Same with the Orlok Ganger, really. He has better access to guns, you know, with bolt guns, things like that as well. And the other thing is the Orlok Gunner Specialist can take heavy weapons as well, which is definitely a highlight there. Decent enough access to skills, really better than Escher generally, and again you get unique names there as well if you want to tap into those later on. But I would say the Escher and Orlok Ganger are just bang average in every other way pretty much, unfortunately, and that's why I've put them at the top of tier 2. Alright, now we are into tier 1. This is where the gangers start to get a little bit better if you ask me. The bottom of tier 2, or sorry, should I say tier 1, is the Palonite Subjugator, the new Palonite Subjugator. These guys are really interesting. They get some really cool access to, of course, grenade launchers and vigilance pattern assault shields. Their stats are now better. They have 2 attacks base, which is pretty good for close combat. Granted, they don't get the best close combat weapons. They only get sort of shock staves and things like that, as well as the shields, of course. But overall, they're pretty decent. They get okay access to skills generally. And usually these guys are going to be sort of focused on either melee sort of threats with the shock staves and the shields, and also the grenade launcher stuff as well. But the fact that you can run these guys as half decent close combat dudes, really, with versatile range, as well as quite shooty with the grenade launcher, which is a fantastic grenade launcher as well. The shields are good. Sure, they're expensive, but you no longer need to have to give these guys the best armor. You can just give them sort of basic armor. So the Palonite Subjugator, after playing a few games with the new Palonites, I have to say I do really like them. The 2 attacks in close combat is pretty good. You know, if you're charging stuff with 2 close combat weapons, that's 4 attacks, and half of those are going to go through most of the time as well, with shock and knockback and stuff like that. They're pretty decent, you know. The Subjugator is pretty decent. Don't write it off, and that is why I put it at the bottom of tier 1 with 34 points. Above that, we've got the Cawdor Brethren. Again, I sort of alluded to the fact that I think Redemptionist Brethren just aren't quite as good as Cawdor Brethren, and the main reason for that is, of course, the equipment they get access to. The Cawdor Brethren gets access to the Blunderpole, which is arguably the best and most cost-effective template weapon in the game. Well, it is. It's 40 credits for an excellent weapon that also has versatile threat range in close combat. You know, and of course, the real sort of shining light, pun intended there, with Cawdor and Redemptionists in general is the, you know, the Articles of Faith, which really do pump them up and make them very, very good. Otherwise, though, the stats are pretty average, and of course, the cost isn't actually that great either. They're not that cheap. But again, that kind of offsets the fact that you get blunderpoles and my favourite close combat weapon in the game, the Greatsword, as well. So there you have it. That's the Cawdor Brethren in at 35 points. Also in tier 1, we have the Corpse Grinder Skinner. These guys are decent, of course. They are really decent. They're very good in close combat. They've got some good starting equipment with the masks and the plate mail as well. They've got decent skill access. They are, you know, beasts in close combat generally, with Berserker built in as well. They are very, very cheap for what they do too. However, where they suffer is that they are incredibly one-dimensional, like the rest of the Corpse Grinders. They can only really do one thing, and that is, of course, close combat. They do get, obviously, shot off the board if you're playing against a shooty gang generally, and they don't have the sort of way of being saved like the Butcher and the Skinner do. Sorry, the Cutter do. The champion, Corpse Grinder champion, has a better mask, of course. The Skinner has, you know, the slightly lower powered mask, I suppose. But they're very, very good, and that's why they're in tier 1. Next up, we have the Palonite Patrolman on equal points to the Corpse Grinder, actually. And the new Palonite Patrolman is pretty decent. They get very good access to skills. They're not that expensive, and they get access to some excellent weapons. I would say the Enforcer Bolt Gun and the Enforcer Shotgun are fantastic weapons, and that alone is worth absolutely taking them. But they do get some really good access to a bunch of stuff, to be honest. And, their unique sort of mechanic now that you can go to the different precincts can help them a little bit as well. But it doesn't really stand out too much. I'd say the areas of goodness for the Palonite Patrolman, of course, are mainly the house list and the access to awesome weapons, as well as their skill access as well, with shooting and stuff in there too. So there you go. Also worth noting that they get some excellent special weapons as well, with the sniper rifle, web guns now, the new chem thrower, which is really cool, and yeah, lots and lots of nasty shooting ranged weapons. Next we have the Nomad Warrior, and this is an interesting one. I really like the Nomad Ganger. Yes, it's a little bit expensive, and you're paying for 2 pieces of equipment that you might not use, especially if you're not playing Ash Wastes games, but the main sort of points that I really highlight on the Nomad Warrior here, they're really high movement. They're movement 6, which is absolutely excellent. It's the fastest ganger in the game otherwise, I think, apart from some of the Venators and stuff. But movement 6 is fantastic. You can get around the board really well. They get excellent access to some really good and unique weapons. Of course, long rifles, as well as lots of shock weapons as well. They really are geared towards more shooty, but they can do both. They're quite versatile. You get some excellent access to skills as well, with shooting in there as well. And yeah, generally speaking, I think the Nomad Warrior is really, really good. Again, mainly for the mobility. I do feel like movement is such a big part of Necromunda. If you can outposition and get around the board, especially on a bigger, more dense board, it really does make a huge difference in how good your gang is going to operate in games as well. So the Nomad Warrior, I would say, is right up there in tier 1 as one of the better gangers generally. On equal footing with the Nomad Warrior, we have its polar opposite in the Squat Ganger, or the Drillkin as they're known. These guys are pretty great, really, aren't they? We love squats. The main sort of points that I would say let them down, of course, is mobility. They're only movement 4, and that is a problem in games, but these guys are just walking gun platforms. You don't need them to move around too much. You just want to give them the multiple rapid-fire auto guns and bolt guns and such. They also get some access to some really, really good other weapons as well, but really, the house list is what really shines for these guys. So I've put them really high on shooting as well, because they're definitely the Dakka boys. Durability as well. They are high toughness. You can give them some good armor too. And just generally, I'd say the Squat Ganger is right up there in tier 1 as one of the better gangers generally. They've also got pretty decent mental stats as well. At the top of tier 1, we have a sort of surprise one, because I think a lot of people overlook it. But of course, the Genestealer Cult Aberrant has to go right up there for me. I've run Genestealer Cult gangs with no champions and just Aberrants and Gangers, and they're really, really effective. These guys are far better than Ogryns. They are more lethal in close combat. They have better weapon skill. They are faster generally, especially faster than Lobo Slaves. For the cost, they're not too bad either, really, with multiple wounds, multiple attacks. They're scary, scary customers. They've also got Unstoppable as well, which is a free skill that you get on these guys. And honestly, pretty good access to close combat weapons as well. Sure, they can't take much war gear or anything, like no grenades or anything like that, but you can give them armor. You can give them some really nasty close combat weapons if you want to splash the cash on like heavy rock saws and things like that. But honestly, these guys with shock whips, shock staves, knives, they can be a real threat. I think you can even give them chain swords and stuff as well. I would say the Aberrant is right up there. They're very tough. They're good in melee. And yeah, pretty mobile close combat fighter as well, and hard to put down at the best of times. I would also say that the skill access here is pretty good as well. Again, with ferocity, giving these guys nerves of steel can be a real pain in the arse. When you've got 3 or 4 of these in a gang, you really want to watch out on the receiving end of this, because these guys really do pack a punch. And in an otherwise very mediocre gang with Genestealer Cult, I'd say the best way to run them at the moment, before these guys get updated, which I'm sure they will at some point, is just go really Aberrant heavy. They are fun. and they are scary, and they are just flipping cool. The models are also great, by the way. So has this gone the way that you expected? Probably not. I imagine I'm going to get lots of angry comments telling me that I'm wrong about everything. That's absolutely fine. And again, it really does depend on your local gaming experience and how you play the game, your house rules, things like that as well. But I'll just take you back to those categories again. Raw stats, house list, cost value, shooting, melee, durability, mobility, versatility, unique mechanics, special rules, skill access, and campaign progression are all taken into account here, and that is why things are the way they are. If you don't like it, fine, just let me know down below in the comments. We're now going to be looking at the top tier. Let's see if you can guess which 8 that I've put in here, because I think it's quite interesting, really. And again, there's only 1 point separating the bottom of tier 0 and the top of tier 1, the aberrant that we just spoke about here. And the bottom of tier 0, I have the Delac Ghost. Now, the Delac Ganger is an all-round pretty decent fighter, to be honest, for a number of reasons. Their house list is really, really good. They get access to web pistols, web gauntlets, web guns, just web stuff generally. They get awesome stuff as specialists as well, with long rifles and other stuff too. The house list for Delac is very good. Auto pistols are very cheap as well. It's worth highlighting there as well. And their cost is very low. These guys are cheap gangers, really. They've got good mental stats. They can do psychic stuff too. You can involve them in your psychic choir, and they can, utilize the Delac powers a little bit too. And generally, these guys are pretty damn good. The skill access is very good as well, with cunning always being a good skill set. I think they get savant maybe there as well. So overall, I would say the Delac Ghost is actually one of the better ones, mainly for those reasons that I've highlighted there, the house list, and the fact that they are pretty cost effective as well. They are not too expensive for gangers. You can give them decent armor, you can give them decent gear, and they are pretty damn good. Slightly above the Delac Ganger, I have put the Saar Ganger, the Saar Tech. For obvious reasons, these guys are very, very shooty. They have higher ballistic skill than any other ganger virtually in the game. They have ballistic skill 3+, if you didn't know. So that's why Saar Gangers are good. They are let down by a couple of things though. Firstly, mobility. They are very slow. But actually, I've scored them quite high in durability, mainly because they come with the armored undersuits built in. You can give them mesh armor for the 4+ save. That makes them very, very durable indeed. Yes, they only have regular toughness with toughness 3, but the 4+ save that you're typically going to give on your Saar Gangers is very, very good. The skill access is excellent, again, with shooting there as well. And generally speaking, the overall shooting ability of a Saar Tech is excellent, and certainly the best ganger, I would say, for shooty, next to maybe the squat. They also have an excellent house list with access to all of the energy weapons that you'd want, all of the las stuff, all of the plasma as well, which is pretty nasty. I think the specialist also gets access to heavy weapons, correct me if I'm wrong there too, which is pretty great. And even their unique mechanic, the Cyber Technica, is okay. You can obviously get it on these guys as well, but their raw stats are pretty good too. I'd say, other than the movement and the initiative being the letdown here, they are decent with their mental stats too. So, even though the cost is quite high, they're more than worth it because they make up for it with the ballistic skill, the mental stats, and all the other stuff that I've just highlighted. So the Saar Tech, definitely a tier 0 contender. Into the top 6 now, we have the Venator Squat Ganger. Now this is absolutely the same as your regular Squat Ganger. However, they're Venators, which just instantly makes them better. These guys can either take the actual squat stuff, so you can give them the legacy of a squat, or you can just give them all the stuff from the trading post up to the rarity that they can get access to, which makes these guys really flipping awesome because you don't have to just give them the squat stuff. You can give them even better stuff should you wish. So they're pretty damn great. Their house list is just unendingly awesome, and that's why all of the Venators, as you'll probably know by now, are going to be in tier 0 here. The Venator squat, I'd say, is one of the worst ones out of the bunch, actually. They're all pretty close, but I'd say he's pretty decent, good at shooting, especially with the weapon access that you get. Durability is pretty high with toughness 4 as well, of course, and the skill access is up to you. You can give these guys whatever skills you want, which is better than the regular squat kin as well. So there you go. I had to put the Squat Ganger in there, so it is what it is. In at number 5, we have the Rattling Ganger. These guys are insane. If you watch my battle report where I did Beastmen versus Rattlings, it was really fun. I actually forgot a few of the special rules around Rattlings, but that's kind of where they really shine. They shine for a number of reasons. So firstly, the downsides of a Rattling, they are small and they are very weak. They only have toughness 2. They're going to get squished in close combat because they've got terrible weapon skill as well and low strength and toughness. They're really useless at anything up close and personal. However, they're very good at shooting and they're also hard to shoot at as well. They are -1 to hit when they're in cover, so hard cover is then -3 if you want to shoot these guys. They're pretty damn good. They also have a free inbuilt slopper as well. And let's top things off with the fact that they are 20 credits and get access to all of the good gear that you get for Venators as well. 20 credits is far too cheap. You could spam these guys in a Venator list and it's pretty dangerous, honestly. Sure, they're going to get mulched in close combat, but when you've got lots of them with good shooty weapons hitting you on the regular and you can't hit them back in cover, they're really, really good. The Rattling has to be up there in tier 0, and that's why. Slightly above the Rattling, I've got the Venator Ogryn Ganger. Just so much better than regular Ogryns in every way. These guys can take the skill sets that you want to give them. They have excellent stats, multiple wounds, strength, toughness is very high. You can give them ferocity, you can give them nerves of steel, you can give them spring up if you wish as well. You can give them all the best skills that you want, really, as they level up. And of course, they get access to shooting weapons. They can have ranged weapons. They can most importantly have template weapons, which is where they really shine. An Ogryn with a hand flamer, an Ogryn with a web pistol, very, very scary and very hard to get rid of as well. So that really is why I put the Venator Ogryn so much higher than the regular Ogryn, because it's pretty obvious, really. They are just so much better in every department, despite having the same stats as your Ogryn Ganger. Okay, so we're into the top 3. Let's see if you guessed what was going to be in my top 3 before this. In at number 3, we have the Goliath Bruiser. The Goliath Bruiser, I think, is the best house ganger in the game. They are flipping awesome. They have really, really good stats. They're very tough. They're very strong. Yeah, sure, they're a little bit slow, but, they're just good off the bat. To be honest, the house list is very good as well. They've got some good close combat weapons. They've got some, shotguns. They've got combat shotguns, which are brilliant. Their house list is pretty decent. Bolt guns as well. And their cost value, actually, for what they do and their stats is actually pretty good. I would say they're not as expensive as they possibly should be. So you do get them for a decent price. Their unique mechanic is absolutely the best. Gene smithing can make these guys toughness 5. You can do all sorts of stuff with them. You can min-max them and make them even cheaper, with not much loss, really. And I would say the Goliath Ganger has to be up there. Certainly the best of the house gangers, but as one of the best gangers in the game as well. And I'm pretty sure most people would agree with me on that one. In at number 2, we have the Venator House Hunter. And again, these guys could go lower than the Rattlings for the cost and stuff. They could go lower than the Squats maybe, but I do think the choice in the stats that you get on the Venator House Hunter is key here, really. Some of them are just far better than others. There is a movement 6 Venator Hunter, which, I alluded to the fact that I think movement is a big, big deal in Necromunda with the Nomad Warriors. But honestly, a movement 6 guy who can have pretty much any weapon in the game and any skill in the game, sprint, for example, gives you an 18-inch double move, things like that. It is disgusting. So the Venator House Hunter absolutely has to be up there. Again, you can give them access to a house legacy of your choosing, so you can give them, Delax stuff or Van Saar stuff as well. But generally speaking, the fact that you can get such amazing equipment on decent stat gangers with high movement, toughness, strength in different areas that you want them, and you can really tailor your gang to how you can pick and choose which of these you want, just makes them flipping awesome, to be honest. So I had to put the House Hunter right up there as well. Can you guess what's number 1? You're probably going to be looking at me thinking, Damon, you love these guys, so you're completely biased here. And I do love these guys, but I think the entire Necromunda community absolutely cried in joy when the Venator Apocrypha Necromunda got released because of Beastman. The Beastman Venator Ganger is the best ganger in the game. Not only are they coolest, because they got horns and they goats and stuff. Beastmen have always been awesome in 40k and in fantasy, if you ask me, but I would say that the Beastman Ganger is just the most solid ganger type in the game. personally, with 41 points at the top here. The raw stats are really, really good. They're similar to a Goliath bruiser. They have strength and toughness 4. Yes, they're only movement 4, but they've got decent weapon skill there as well. Their cost value, honestly, they adjusted it. They were too cheap when they first got released. They're still arguably too cheap, I would say. You could up it a little bit. And again, I think some people would disagree with me on that, but these are really, really good. Shooting wise, they get access to shooting weapons. You can still shoot with them and they're not too bad at it either. They're pretty average. Melee, obviously these guys really shine. They've got some special rules that give them +1 attack for a flesh wound that they take as well. So they get more and more angry the more you chip away at them, which makes them fantastic. They get another special rule, which means that these guys are immune to the negative downsides of drugs like Frenzon and stuff, which is pretty awesome too. They're durable. They are versatile in the fact that these guys can be used as, template caddies, as well as close combat and stuff as well. And yeah, just the unique rules. The skill access is ridiculous. You can give these guys all the best skills you want to as well. And they're just awesome. I think we all know Beastmen are awesome. And that is why I've scored them so high at the top of my official Necromunda Wellywood Ganger tier list. So again, I know this is very contentious for a lot of people, and thank you for sticking with me this far. It's been very difficult to do this, to be fair, and I'm still not completely certain this is the right thing to do. This could be completely upside down, really. I could give this more thought, and I could come back, and it might be completely different. So that's just how Necromunda is. But I hope you enjoyed this anyway. I'd be really interested to know what you think down below in the comments. Please do support me by liking, sharing, subscribing, and checking out the Patreon as well. And I'll be back with another one real soon. Peace out.